Good morning, everybody. Um, Today we're going to be talking about the Dungeon Crawler Carl series. This is probably going to be the first in about 4 videos I'm going to make on this because there's 8 books and I can't really talk about the whole story until I've read the whole 8 books. And I've so far only gotten through the first two. I'm about halfway through the third one right now. But I really wanted to talk about it because I'm really enjoying this series. So we're going to completely dispense with all of the normal, the plot. Well, we're going to do a little bit of the plot, but we're not going to get into what it's really about yet. And we're just going to talk about it. So let's go over the basic setup for these books. Basically, it's set in the present day. There's this guy Carl. He's it's in the middle of the night during a snowstorm in Seattle. He's really only dressed in a leather jacket and his boxer underwear, and he's outside trying to convince a cat that he's cat sitting for his now ex-girlfriend down from a tree. The cat's name is Donut, and all of a sudden, every building, anything undercover, people under umbrellas, anything like that, all of a sudden gets sucked downwards into the ground. So that basically anything man-made with like a cover on it is suddenly destroyed, and everybody in it is killed, which is kind of a surprising thing. Um, Immediately following that, after Carl finally has Donut jump into his arms, a voice comes to everybody that's still alive. It basically says that the earth has been kind of like earmarked for mining by a company called the Boring Corporation, and that what they're going to do is they're going to allow a game show basically to happen, in which they're going to create a series of dungeons underground, and anybody that wants to can enter into the portals to this underground dungeon to and they can compete. If they get to the 18th floor, well then they get control of what's left of Earth. The Earth won't be mined. And what follows is Carl and his cat Prince Donut going through dungeons. Very early on, Carl wins a prize in a prize box, which is basically a loot box. That allows Princess Donut to start talking and become a full character, and that's very important because as you're reading this book, you're going to fall in love with Princess Donut. Trust me. Um, so basically, you have Carl just walking around in a slowly disintegrating leather coat because of things, fighting monsters alongside Princess Donut. Just dressed in the leather coat and the boxer underwear, bare feet, by the way. Having to kill monsters. They meet another character called Mordecai. He's their trainer in the first 2 floors. He kind of isn't supposed to really help them that much, but he does. He kind of gives them a little bit of like a pointer, even though he's not really supposed to. And it continues on from there. So are these books worth reading? And oh my goodness, they are. I kind of avoided these books for a while. I mean, the name of them made it kind of sound like maybe they were just going to be like kids books. I didn't really pay too much attention to them until I started hearing more and more about them. So I finally gave them a try, and I am so glad I did. These books are perfectly paced. There's a lot of action in them. You're not bored at anything because obviously, Carl and Donut have to fight off a lot of monsters, goblins, hobgoblins, meth creating llamas that spit lava. And also the goblins are addicted to meth. So at one point, Carl and Donut create a war between the goblins and the lava splitting llamas. Try and say that 3 times fast. Which is as silly as it sounds. It's hilarious. But here's the thing about these books. These books do not skimp on character development. You really get to know both Carl and Princess Donut. And a matter of fact, at one point in the second book, I'm not going to say what it is, but at one point in the second book, Princess Donut looks up to Carl towards the end and says just one sentence that is, in a lesser book, it would probably be played for laughs. But in this book, it's borderline heartbreaking to read. And you kind of realize that Princess Donut has a whole other story going on behind her eyes than Carl does. And even though these books are told from the point of view of Carl, these books could be rewritten and told from the point of view of Donut, and it would be all the same events, but it would be a totally different story. And my goodness, it's incredibly interesting to see that, because you don't even notice that the character development is going on until you realize how well developed all these characters are. And even the secondary characters, Mordecai, there's a talk show host called Odette. She's well worth listening to. The different talk shows, because as it goes on, you realize that, in all honesty, this competition is basically like a galactic version of Eurovision, to be honest with you. Every year there's a new season of it, and every year a different galactic empire hosts it. And just so happens the Borant Corporation prefers having dungeons that they dig into things. Other ones start to you find out other ones have things like where they prefer to do gladiatorial games and so on. But it's basically done for basically ratings, because as Mordecai explains, the actual mining of the planets is pretty small potatoes. It's the ratings that make the money. And so basically the entire galaxy is watching these dungeon crawlers, as they're called, go through these dungeons for entertainment. It's basically a reality show. And and here's the fun thing: as these books progress, you find out that there is a heck of a lot of other plots going on. There are plots inside of plots in this book that are affecting things far outside of the dungeon and in Carl's point of view. I'm not going to go into that, because again, that's something I want you to find out. So yes, you should read these books. These books are incredibly well written. These books are really, really good. I can't get over how good they are. They sound like they're stupid. They're really not. They're actually wonderfully well written and wonderfully realized in the characters. And it's very rare to find a book that can actually do that. I will say, any streaming service that gets the rights to make this into a TV show, go subscribe to it, because they're going to have something special if they do it right. And like I said, I fell in love with Princess Donut, but then again, I'm a cat person, but I think anybody will fall in love with Princess Donut. She's kind of great. The books aren't that long. The third book is a little bit longer than the first. Actually, the third book is about the same size as the first two books put together. First two books are about 300 pages. The third book that I'm reading right now is almost 600. But it's because each floor gets a little bit more progressively difficult. There's a lot of lore in these books, basically the books have to explain the universe to you. But at the same time, it's presented as exposition. And normally I hate that. I hate just having somebody just sit there and say, okay, this is how the world works. Here's the thing, though. It kind of makes sense in this because basically, you have an AI that's sarcastically, constantly telling Carl about everything that he's experiencing, and the AI is hilarious. First off, and it's also a lot of fun. It doesn't get in the way of your enjoyment of the book. Definitely read this book. I loved it. Please, please, please pick it up, and you will love it. Trust me. Anyway, that's my quick take on the Dungeon Crawler Carl books 1 and 2. Expect another. Probably I'm going to do these every two books. It's just taking me a while because I can only read so fast. You know, give me a break. But I will. But we will revisit this. Probably not once a week, like I was doing with other books, because I want to get through two of them at a time, and I have no idea how long the fourth book is going to be. But we will be revisiting this in the near future. Anyway, take care. Keep reading, and I'll see you again soon. Bye bye.